Hey everyone, today we're going to be looking at a really cool product. It's this new Ikea Frekvens. I don't know how to say it, let's be honest. I won't say it again during this entire video. The main thing to know is it's a really interesting modular speaker system that allows you to mix and match subwoofers and speakers and different grills to come up with some really wild stuff. And this is a collaboration with Teenage Engineering. And if you're not familiar with them, they make a bunch of really hipster synthesizers, and they also on the site have these really cool 3D printed things that you can add to your Frekvens system. And as far as I know it, this is a limited time collaboration between Teenage Engineering and Ikea, and it's only available in stores. So if you're interested, I would suggest getting to a store soon to pick these things up. And these completely remind me of the super minimal bronze speakers from the 60s, designed by Dieter Rem. So very minimal, very geometric, and just super cool. So I'm judging these as design or art, not as much as just buying a pair of speakers. But it's really cool. You can mix and match the elements together to come up with some pretty wild stuff. This is one of my favorite creations. This integrates one of the light visualizer modules into a pair of speakers and a sub. And I'll show you how we got there. But let's start from the beginning. So this is the main speaker that I bought. This has a subwoofer and a two-way speaker. And you can see it comes with a big bag of cables. This is the two-way small speaker. They sell that separately. And this is the sub. So those are the package deal that you get. You can see they're really nice looking. They're a matte black finish. I will say they're a little bit of a fingerprint magnet, but they do look really cool. So let's jump in with the two-way speaker. This is also available separately if you'd like it without the subwoofer, though I'd strongly recommend getting one. And this speaker has a 3-inch woofer and a 3/4-inch soft dome tweeter. And according to the specs, this has an 8-watt amplifier, and so it must have a passive crossover. And they claim the frequency response is from 75 to 20,000 hertz, and that checks out. It doesn't have a ton of bass, but it has enough to be convincing. And near the tweeter is this big old knob. It's really fun to play with. It feels a little cheap, but it does spin around, and it is synced with the volume levels on your phone. So out of the box, the speaker runs on AC power, but because it's a Bluetooth speaker, I would strongly recommend upgrading to the optional lithium-ion battery pack. The one for this is $15. And if you can't find it in the lighting section, look where the blinds are, because that's where I found it. So it can be a little tricky to find the battery. Make sure to ask somebody. And this battery is rechargeable inside the speaker. So once you plug it into the wall, it will recharge the battery. All right, so once the battery is installed, you can put the circular cover back on, tighten it down, and you're in business. You now have a rechargeable Bluetooth speaker, which is much, much better. And if you tap the button on the back, it will turn on and it all works. So let's move on to the sub. Now the sub in this case is more of a woofer. It doesn't really go as low as a true sub, but in this context, it works really well. And so the sub is a 5¼ inch driver with a rubber surround, and it seems to have a pretty long throw. That is powered by a 24-watt amp, which is pretty good for a Bluetooth speaker. And that's rated from 50 to 180 hertz, and that about checks out. And around back, you can see there's a big old passive radiator as well, so that will help with reinforcing the bass. And the cabinet itself uses the same system of dots and screw points. And so we'll get into those in a minute, but what I also would recommend doing with the sub is also upgrading this to be rechargeable. This uses a different rechargeable battery because the sub needs more power. And in order to access that, you have to take these teeny tiny screws out. So just keep an eye on that. Don't lose them. And this is the NB battery. This is probably next to the Bluetooth speakers. This one costs $20. It's a little more than the other one, but it supplies twice as much power. Just take this battery, make sure you line up the contacts and drop it in. It's pretty easy to install. There's this weird little tab, and it's in an awkward spot. I left it on so I could take the battery out if I needed to. but it's pretty easy to get it in there and then just screw down the cover, and hopefully you'll never have to get in there again. All right, so now that that's done, we now have ourselves a rechargeable subwoofer, which is pretty darn cool. You can see it turns right on while not being plugged in. And around back here, you can see there's another one of these little spinny dials. Again, this spins infinitely on the base, but it is limited to a certain range. And you'll notice that on all these speakers, there are AC in and out as well as signal. So we'll get to that in a minute, but there's a whole lot of cables involved in this system. All right, so if you look at the box, they recommend this one particular configuration. So I think this is like the primary way they want it to work. I think it's pretty cool looking setup. It reminds me of a bunch of like ADS speakers from the 70s and 80s, which is pretty neat. I like this arrangement with the woofer and the tweeter side by side, even if acoustically it's maybe not ideal. And you can see here at the top and the back, there's these color-coded inputs. So one is the power button, which is blue, and then there is an 1/8" jack for input and output. And so that's used for chaining to other speakers, which we'll be doing. And the gray one is the subwoofer output. So I'm guessing this just takes the signal and puts a filter on it. So anything above 180 hertz is filtered out. There's also a lot of little accessories, little fiddly bits in the box. And so you get a bunch of little feet, you get a lot of little screws, and these little connector bars, and those are used to connect the cabinets together. You also get these straps, which are used to make a carrying handle, and they even give you a nice little tool for the screws. So overall, it's a pretty nice little system. They were even smart enough to include these little rubber pieces that you use to make sure the cabinets don't rattle when they're placed next to each other. So, you know, overall, really well thought out, pretty cool little system. It reminds me of Legos or something like that. So it's really fun to bolt things together and reconfigure them and try different things. So for somebody like me, this is just so much fun. These little rubber feet are the one thing I think are really not well thought out. They require that you stick them into the cabinet, which makes it a little more permanent, and they don't play well with the connectors, so kind of not great. It comes with 3 cords. This is the main AC power cord, and so that's really quite long, and it has this cool coiled wire style, which reminds me of like headphones from the 70s. So real hipster kind of stuff here. They also give you a really short power cable that uses the same kind of little pigtail, and that's used for connecting the speaker and the sub together so they can share the same wall plug. And then they give you an 1/8" cable here with, again, the coil so that you can connect the signal between the 2 cabinets. So all the signals between the cabinets are done through these wires. There is no multiple pairing of Bluetooth. But, you know, I think that's part of the charm here, is that everything is like a patch cable kind of situation. So this is that little rubber piece that I was talking about before. So if you were to take these plastic cabinets and bolt them together, there would be some rattling. So these are used to isolate the noise. So basically you just stick these into the holes when you are going to put 2 speaker cabinets together, and then you line them up and you kind of wiggle them in place. It feels like Jello when you first put it on there, but it'll eventually seat down, and it works really well. And so these are the little plastic connectors they give you. And these attach with these metal screws with a little hex head, and they give you that tool. And so you can thread them together. So when you're connecting 2 cabinets like this, you're going to use 2 couplers on one side and 2 couplers on the other side. So that way you end up with a really solid connection. It feels like one speaker at that point. Now, one comment about the system in general is for something that's supposed to be all about modularity and flexibility and creativity, when you buy this subwoofer with the speaker, it only comes in black. If you buy a separate speaker, you can choose either red or yellow, and in those packages you get black and that color. So you get a lot more if you get the individual speaker. So I don't really know what's going on there. You also can't get extra connectors and other little bits, and I think that would be really cool if they offered those. But, you know, overall, this is a really cool looking speaker. I mean, this thing is beautiful. I really like this matte black finish, even if it's a little bit of a fingerprint magnet. It just really looks cool. This does not look cheap. It's really stylish. I really hope that Ikea keeps building on this system and coming out with more accessories. And the really fun thing about this system is that you can do whatever you want to do. So you can mix and match speakers and light modules and do all sorts of wacky stuff. So, I set this up to begin with the configuration that they have on the box just to see how that looked and sounded. And it looks really cool. I think it's a really nice setup. But, you can do more with this system. So let's look at some other options to take this a little bit further, because I think that's what this system is all about, going a little crazy. So when I was at IKEA, I walked through the scratch and dent area, and lo and behold, there was an extra speaker. It had some problems. It was missing the power cable, but oddly, it had 2 sets of yellow grills. And that's exactly what I was looking for. So I went ahead and picked that up, and I got it for a really, really good price. So my thought was I could make a really cool boombox looking thing by strapping another speaker on the opposite side. So I grabbed a few of these connectors and hooked that up. And, everything goes together really smoothly with this system. I didn't have a single problem with things not fitting or kind of being stripped out. So, overall, the quality seems really, really solid here. All right, so, once we get everything all connected, we have a pretty cool looking setup now. We have 2 of these full range speakers with a subwoofer module sandwiched in between them. So this will give me a lot more sound than just having the one speaker and the woofer. It's worth noting, though, that this is in mono. I don't think there's any sort of stereo separation in the signal, so it's really just about loudness at this point. And so I tried a couple different combinations here of different grills. So it looks really cool just having one side being yellow, and fortunately that's what you'll get if you start with the all black sub speaker combo and then add another speaker in yellow. I just happen to have these extra grills, so I threw them on both sides to see how that looks. So once I got these connected, I did realize there was a hitch. So the connectors here for building a handle use the same slot as I'm using for connecting the speakers. So there's some weird limitations here in terms of where you can connect things. And so if I want to make this work, I have to be a little bit creative. The handle itself also isn't super premium. It's just kind of a relatively low quality piece of webbing that's just sewn in half at the ends. And then essentially you take these black connector pieces and sort of pinch it down. So, it's nothing special. I wish that there were some other handles, or maybe there was something in leather or just other colors. But it would be pretty easy to whip something up yourself if you wanted to. In this case, what I ended up doing is putting handle on the side because I couldn't put it on the top. And so, it works like you'd imagine. You just lay the material down, you put these longer connector pieces on both sides, and it sort of traps the part of the fabric that is folded over and sewn. And, it gives you a surprisingly strong handle with this setup. So no complaints about the handle strength, but I think visually it's nothing special. And, I think they could have done something a little more creative with this. All right, so let's talk about wiring. So all speakers do have internal batteries, but we're still going to need to plug it into the wall to charge them. And so charging is kind of fun. So there's lots of wiring here. So you take the long cord, the AC cord, plug it into one of the modules. I'm just starting here at the top, and you can plug that right into the wall. So that all makes sense. And then what you need to do is you need to take a short power patch cable and plug it from one speaker to the next. And then you need to do that one more time to connect, say, from the sub to the last speaker. So you've got 3 power patch cables essentially connecting these three things together, at least when you're charging it. So when you take it outside, you can remove all three of those plugs. But in the short term, it's going to look like a patch bay, basically, which kind of is cool because it feels like an analog synthesizer or something. But, you know, it is a little bit cluttery. So as soon as you plug it into power, as long as all three speakers are wired together, they will all start to charge. And you'll see a small red light next to the power button, and that means that the internal battery is charging. So you can see that here, all three have the red light. So that means that charging is happening. So when we start talking about signal, this is the wire that you're always going to need. They don't give you in this setup an extra 1/8 inch cable to connect the additional speaker. So for now, I just grabbed this white cable that connects from the first speaker to the second speaker. And then from the second speaker, I connect the short pigtail into the subwoofer. I tried connecting them two different ways, and that seemed to be the best way. So speaker to speaker, and then the last speaker to the subwoofer. So this is the completed system. So I think it looks pretty cool. This is a, you know, portable battery powered Bluetooth boombox. And you know, the whole thing wasn't very expensive. So all in, this would be $220. So not too shabby. And you know, it really does sound really good, especially outside. This is definitely a party speaker. This is a speaker that likes to be turned up. I think it sounds best when it's at 50% to 100%. At really low volumes, it's not nearly as impressive. I don't think there's a loudness circuit. A loudness circuit basically compensates for the fact that your ears can't hear bass as well when the volume is low. So a loudness circuit will basically turn up the bass a bit when it's quiet. This speaker doesn't have it, which means that at low volumes, it can sound a little thin. Once you turn it up, it really does sound fantastic. So, you know, now that we have this built, let's have some more fun. So this is a LED module that they sell. This is $40. And this basically is a visualizer. So it has a microphone in it. It can hear the music, and it will scroll through a couple different animations based on the beat of the music. And so there's a red power button here, and then the yellow button cycles through the different modes. And I also bought a little accessory package. So this is separate. I think this is around $15 or so. And it basically has a couple different plastic pieces. There's a louver, there's the circular piece, there's a black base, and then there's two little yellow handle pieces. Now those little handles only really attach to the light modules for some reason, so they don't hook into the speakers correctly. They will hook in, but they don't hook in a strong way, so you really can't use them you know, to carry the speaker around. But you can see here on the light module, it looks really nice. So this is just to add a little bit of flair, I guess, to our speaker. So I was playing around some different configurations. This one is a little odd, but kind of cool. So just dropping some of these other little accessory pieces here in the corner definitely adds a little bit of flavor. This is what it looks like, you know, switching with a black and yellow for the speaker and sort of doing some crazy stuff with the LED visualizer module. So, you know, all sorts of different options here on how to, you know, personalize it for your own taste. And the LED module has a number of different modes. This is this cool linear one. This is kind of this staticky thing. You know, there's all sorts of different modes that you can cycle through. Some of them don't feel like they move with the music as much as some others, but you know, whatever you're in the mood for. This module is not dimmable. So, you know, if you're in a dark room, you're definitely going to be lighting up the room with this thing. It's really quite bright. But it's fun. So if you were having a party or something, you could plug this in and, you know, add a little bit of visual interest. So it's cool. And they even sell like a tripod tree, so you can have multiples of these up high off the ground. You can bolt them together in different configurations. So the light module is really fun. They also have one that's just a plain light. And I think that's really what the louvers are for. But, you know, I figured I'd use it for other things. So this is my final monstrosity. I think this is kind of cool. So this has the visualizer module sort of tucked in the corner. I have the decorative handles on top. And acoustically, this is kind of funky, but I think it looks cool. So, you know, basically you can do whatever you can think of. So before I wrap up, I just wanted to talk a bit about sound quality and quantity. So Currently, my favorite Bluetooth speaker is this Marshall Stockwell II. The thing sounds amazing, especially at low to mid volumes. You can see it's quite a bit smaller than this Ikea speaker, but since I had them on hand, I figured I would put them side by side. So if we give them a listen, you'll see there is a difference. These are both turned all the way up. Just to really see the difference here. And I would say that the Marshall has a really nice sound, but the low end definitely drops out, especially when turned up. The low end sounds great at low volumes, but as you turn it up, it kind of disappears. This Ikea speaker just has a lot more projection. It has a little bit of a forward sound on the highs, and it has definitely a lot more thump. All right, so the last test I wanted to do was actual sound pressure levels. So what I did is I'm just using the noise app on my watch, which apparently is pretty accurate. And I'm just playing pink noise and switching between them. And you can see that the Ikea speaker is putting out about 87 dB. And my Marshall is putting out 77, and that's at max volume for both of them, and the Marshall is flat. And that 10 decibel difference is huge. So a 10 decibel difference means that the Ikea speaker sounds twice as loud as the Marshall. So it's a huge difference. So if I unplug one of the speakers in the Ikea, so it's just like the single speaker in the sub, you can see the levels drop by 3 dB, which is exactly as expected. So, you know, in general, this is a much louder speaker. I mean, it's twice as loud. And so, you know, again, if you're looking for something that will be good outside or good in a big party, this Ikea speaker is perfect. So hopefully this video answers a lot of your questions. I know I had a lot when I was in the store. I couldn't figure out what was connected to what and what parts I needed and what my options were. So I wanted to put this together for the next person that was shopping at Ikea. And so if this looks interesting to you, go pick up a pair before they're gone. Remember, they're only available in store. So thanks for watching, and please be sure to subscribe and like. I'm going to be making a lot more videos. Thanks. Bye.